Hello, welcome to the Stereoscopic Gallery Workshop. This is Jim Harp, my avatar. I am standing within AltSpace inside a gallery I created. It's actually a world you can go visit if you have AltSpace. And this is also a file, a Unity file, that I'm going to be providing to anyone who wants to download it. There's going to be a bunch of resources with this workshop. I'll just kind of cover a bit of what I'm trying to do today. Obviously, we don't have enough time to give a really extensive tutorial in Unity. That takes quite a while. But I'm hoping that I can provide something useful to a number of different people. If you've never used Unity, maybe if you're not even familiar with VR, I'm hoping you can watch this little presentation and at least get a sense of what's possible. If you've been using Unity a little bit, you're kind of familiar with it, as many of us are. I hope this will give you some tools so you can see how easy it is to take your stereoscopic pictures or pictures you've collected and present them in this amazing medium, which incidentally, millions of people have very high quality stereo headsets. Why not take advantage of it? A lot of us in the 3D world were kind of depressed a couple years ago when we saw the 3D TVs that had hit the market suddenly disappear, and kind of about the same time the ViewMaster company bit the dust for good. And yet out came these VR headsets, and essentially you have the best of a VR headset, the best of a ViewMaster, the best of a 3D TV. It's all in here. And this is an amazing way to present your work. It's just a matter of knowing how to do it. And Unity makes it very easy. I'll talk about some of the things that are in here. As you can see over on this wall here are just some traditional stereo pictures, a couple I took, a vintage card. I'll talk a little bit about how you can frame them and present them. Right here is a semisphere that has a VR 180 image in it. This was actually extracted from a 360. It's extracted from the 3D 360 sphere that is outside the window. You want to talk about seeing 3D through the window? Come in here and you'll see it. This is a 3D 360 sphere taken with an Insta360 Pro camera of Central Park. And if you come in here, you'll notice that the view is slowly rotating. That's one of the other cool things you can do in Unity is you can animate your images. You can make them spin. You can make them get bigger or smaller. I'll talk briefly about what Unity is for those of you who aren't familiar with it. It is technically a game engine. In other words, it was originally designed to make video games. And back in the 80s, people who made video games pretty much had to create the entire universe of physics and how to display imagery. All that had to be done from scratch. And some very smart people got the idea of basically standardizing that, coming out with a platform that solved all those problems and making it possible for lots of people to create video games. This platform has grown and has taken on many more uses over the years. As virtual reality became more prevalent, Unity was developed to got features to make virtual reality programming very easy and quick to do. Unity is also these days used for such things as animation. You can actually create little movies in it. It's got all kinds of uses, and so as you can gather, it's very complex piece of software, something you can spend years studying. But by the same token, you can be a hack like me, go in, learn how to do a few things, and have a lot of fun with it. You don't have to be an expert. All right, what I'm going to do now is change views. I'm actually going to give you the view from within my headset. And we're going to walk around this gallery. I'll just tell you a little bit about what the things are that are here and how they were made. After that, we'll actually go into Unity software, and I will just show you the process, how you would open this file, and dragging your own pictures, how you'd replace some of what I had here. And I think a lot of you will be able to, if you're so inclined, will be able to very quickly create your own galleries. And I hope so, because I love looking at 3D imagery, and I'm hoping to see a lot more of it on AltSpace and Oculus apps and other places. There's a great big set of opportunities. So I'm encouraging you all to take advantage of them. All right, I'm going to go change views here. Okay, so now I'm actually wearing the headset, and I'm going to try not to shake my head too much. So you can see my hands. I'm hoping not to make anyone nauseous. We're going to look around the gallery a little bit. The first thing I have here, this is just a stereo pair I took, and I wanted to demonstrate about framing. When I first started putting images together in galleries, I had this idea that I would want to actually create frames in Unity. But I quickly realized that was kind of impractical. You can see I've actually put my workshop notes within this world so you can look at them. So you could make separate model frames. It just makes more sense to make the frame part of the image. And so if you look here, I've actually just have a frame. I'm going to put this in the resources here. It's just a basic black outline. I put a little plaque on it where I can type in what I want. Now, vintage cards are another problem. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, since a stereo card as you get it from the antique store is not symmetrical, you can't just pop it in here. You can see what my solution to that is I've actually copied the left and the right sides, pushed them over, and made two duplicate frames. And I really like presenting 3D cards this way, the old stereo cards, because you can see, you sort of get a sense of what they are. And they look wonderful in AltSpace, in VR. It's really so much fun seeing these old cards, because as I'm sure all of you know, the quality of photography back in the late 1800s, early 1900s was spectacular. And these things work really well. And one of the nice things you can do in virtual reality is you can make these images as big as you want. You can have them fill the entire wall. It's really quite powerful. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to move over here. Sorry for the motion sickness. VR 180. VR 180 is one of my favorite platforms. I'm hoping it'll take off more. We've seen a lot of 360 and 3D 360 videos and photography. But the fact is, for the most part, I don't spend my life in a spinning chair, and I don't think a lot of us do either. We're used to sitting and getting our content in front of us, and VR 180 makes that possible. And it's hard to tell if this is going to take off or not, but I really like it. And so what I've done here is I've created two VR 180 images that are half spheres. I got these spheres from a brilliant guy on AltSpace named Chapter Green, who generously shared them with me. They are literally just spheres cut in half with basically the normals, the thing that holds the image has been flipped inside, so the image is actually on the inside. Works very well for taking a rectilinear output as you get from an Evo or one of those Views cameras. What I do with these is I actually put a plane. You can't see it. It's a plane that's invisible, but I find that when you're presenting these, if people can just walk right into them, it actually gets to be a little, it's bizarre. So I try to figure out what my preferred viewing distance is with the VR headset on and sort of create a barrier so you can't get any closer than that. So I'm going to move over to the other one. And here's another, I know you're not really seeing the full impact of it. I hope you'll put on a VR headset and come in here to take a look at it. This is a place in Tokyo called Team Lab, Borderless. And one of the cool things you can do with VR 180, and I'll just show you some more of my workshop notes that are here in the gallery. You see up there, this is what VR 180 images look like when you, quote, stitch them. You process them out of a camera. You get this rectilinear kind of distorted image that's basically a side-by-side pair. And just to give you as a comparison, the way that 3D 360 images are presented is over-under. You can see there are two, it's basically you get a square from two 360 3D pairs. So one of the fun things you can do with VR 180 that can make it more immersive and a wonderful way to present it when you are in an environment like this is you can actually join them together. The way that over-under image there works is that the left is on top and the right is on the bottom. So as you can picture, it's not that hard to go into Photoshop and take the left images, put them on top, the right images, put them on bottom. One of the things I like to do with presenting 3D 360 spheres is sort of create my own little environment for them within the gallery. And so what I've done here is I've created a little door. And just as a reminder, you're getting all this if you download the file. You're getting all my little tricks. So you're welcome to paste your own images into it. And even if you don't have a 360 3D camera, you can do this. And I should also mention that the brilliant Masuji Sudo actually came up with an app that works quite well if you work within its limitations, that lets you take a single 360 camera, which is available inexpensively, and basically do a cha-cha with it and get one of these 3D 360 spheres. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with these. So as I say, I find it a little disorienting to see one of these spheres, so I like to actually put a little door, and I have an arrow here saying this way in. And as I walk into it, what I'm going to see is this result of combining these two VR 180 images together. One of the things I like to do, and so I'm actually inside, I'm just going to spin around. I hope this isn't nausea-inducing, but it is really fun to look at. One of the things I find with these 360 spheres, it's very important that you control your placement within them to not get a distorted view, to not have the lines all curving around you or whatever. And so I find that you pretty much want to have your eyes right at the center point of the sphere, and you need to have yourself positioned at the center of the sphere. The way I accomplish that is I actually have two invisible planes as a triangle going into the center of the sphere. And so if you walk, you'll notice I said on the sign, walk in as far as you can get. I sort of force you to go all the way into the ideal viewing point. And you'll notice once you're inside this sphere, you are surrounded by the imagery. You really don't know how to get out. So I always put a little platform here saying this way out, so you know how to go back into the gallery. Okay. And then as the same token, I was showing how you could cut and paste two VR180s to make one 360, you can also do the same trick in reverse. We are surrounded, if you're in this gallery, by this image of Central Park slowly spinning around us. It's a 360 sphere. But if I want to present it as a VR180, if I want to take my favorite part of it, I can just do the reverse of what I did over there, cut this image in half and move the left over to the left and the right over to the right. And what I have here is a little segment of that that 360 3D image. Here's basically a little VR180 segment of it. So this is really just the start. The point I really want to make is you can take these image formats and you can experiment with them. You can do stuff with them. And that, there's a lot of new ideas that I'm sure you could still come up with. Here's another really fun thing that you'll see in this gallery. And it has much more impact if you're standing here, because floating in front of me, I see these two vintage cameras and a roll of film floating in space, and they seem very solid. But this is actually just a single plane. I'm using a transparent PNG shader that has alpha. So in other words, the PNG files let you have transparency. You don't have to have anything in part of them, and you just have a basically see-through image. This shader lets me create a stereo pair that has empty space in the PNG format, and then I can present it, and you see it in 3D. What's quite interesting is these really seem like solid physical objects standing here. But if you walk over to the side, you actually discover that it is indeed just a flat plane. It's not a stereo, these things aren't floating in space. Now over here, as I said, I tried to make this world sort of the workshop notes. I don't want you guys to have to take notes when you have all these other things to do. And so I'm going to kind of go over here a little bit of what we're going to talk about within Unity. It's good to sort of understand the basic idea of how you present stereoscopic imagery. You need to understand Unity's terms. And there's not a lot you need to know to get started with this, but this information is helpful. There's three things basically you need to deal with if you're displaying a stereoscopic image. The first thing is a texture. Texture is basically your image. It's your picture. Textures can be a lot of different things when you're creating complex games in Unity, but for our purpose, a texture is your stereo pair or your over-under 360. Important to note that Unity is not image editing software. You need to align these things, crop them the way you want them. You need to have them symmetrical before you bring them into Unity. For those of you who are new to this, highly recommend Stereo Photomaker, free software, once again by the brilliant Masuji Sudo, that is basically this free software that lets you do anything you need to make your stereoscopic images look great in an environment like this. So the texture is your picture. Shaders. I'm providing a couple of specific shaders that allow you to do these tricks. What is a shader? A shader does a lot more than render shade. A shader determines how all the pixels that Unity is showing will look on your computer screen or in your VR headset. So shaders can be used to make water rippling, they can make leaves blowing around, but one of the other cool things that a shader can do is it can send one specific image to the left eye, one specific image to the right eye. So you can see why the right shader can be very important to do what we're trying to do here. And the third thing is a material. A material is basically the thing that determines what a plane, these still images you see here on planes, just basically a flat plane that I've put a material onto. Sphere, we are surrounded by a sphere. I'll show you that actually when we're in Unity. It's kind of fun to see what this world looks like within the editor. Or any other 3D object. And there's actually, you can put these 3D stereoscopic materials on all kinds of things. There's a wonderful world in AltSpace, a guy named Stephen Slater did, where he put stereoscopic textures and materials onto vases, and they were just amazing items. There's a lot of creative stuff you can do with this. But basically, the thing you need to know is that what a material is a material is the thing that holds your texture and has the information about the shader, and you drag material onto an object, and you can actually see the list of my materials. So this is what the basic procedure for displaying a stereoscopic image. You have to either create or copy a material. You have to make sure it has a stereoscopic shader. You can either use the PNG shader Jay Onklitz came up with, or you can use the what's called the unlit stereo texture. And I have to give credit to a guy named Ben VR, a genius who has contributed so many brilliant things to AltSpace VR. He created the unlit stereo texture shader that has made so much of this possible. So really, I don't want to fail to mention that there's some really brilliant people who are sharing a lot of stuff, who've made a lot of this possible, and very generously. But anyway, this is basically what the gag is. You create a material, you make sure it has a shader that's stereoscopic, you drag a texture onto that shader, the picture that you want to show, and then you drag that material onto a plane, a sphere, whatever it is you want to display it, and you're in business. So what I'm going to do now is actually open up Unity, open up this file that this world is made out of in Unity, and talk a little bit about how you can work with it. All right, what we're looking at here is what that gallery looks like opened within Unity. If you open the file NSA21 Workshop Demo, this is opened in Unity 2019.4. I don't think you'd be able to open it in an earlier version of Unity, but it should work in any later version. I'm using Unity on a Windows computer. I know some people use it on the Macs. I don't see how you could use this software without a 3-button mouse with a scroll wheel. The scroll wheel is what lets me zoom in and out, so I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit. One thing that's worth mentioning as we look at this, when I started shooting stereoscopically in 1995, I could tell everyone that I had a 3D camera and I was shooting 3D. These days, the term 3D is generally accepted to mean what we're seeing here, a 3D model of something within computerized space. So in other words, this is a 3D model of this room because you can see it has X, Y, and Z dimensions. So you'll notice I'm using the term stereoscopic for the most part because 3D now means this sort of computer modeling thing. Stereoscopic is what refers to our old-fashioned stereoscopic images. You're still welcome to use the term 3D, but a lot of people, if you say you're going to a 3D convention, they're going to assume this is what you're talking about, 3D modeling, creating things within software like Blender or Maya. So we're dealing with stereoscopic stuff, and you'll notice it is the National Stereoscopic Association convention we're at. I'm going to scroll in a little bit more and just give you a couple of quick guidelines if you're new to Unity. You'll see that I can take my mouse and click at any of these objects here. When I click on an object, there's 3 keys that'll really help you if you're new to Unity. The W key, when you've clicked on an object and selected it, it's outlined in orange. W key gives these arrows. You can move stuff up and down. The R key is for scaling. R lets you get this little square, you can make something bigger and smaller. And that brings up an important point. When you're putting your stereoscopic pictures in Unity, it's not going to know what the right proportion of them is. You create a plane or whatever it is you're putting them on. You have to make sure that you have the right length and width. And you'll see on the scaling tool, let me see if I can zoom in for you. It's got these little handles that can make something taller or wider. If you're putting your pictures in here, I recommend keep a copy of the original one. As silly as it sounds, you want to actually see what it normally looks like because you're going to actually have to set the proportions as you like. And you'll notice I can make this thing as big as I want. I mean, this is one of the fun things. You can make it as small as I want. You really have just unlimited power to design this little environment as you wish. Let's just talk briefly a bit about how you would go about putting a different image in here. As I talked about earlier, you basically have these 3 sets of things that you're dealing with. The plane is the thing that I created, and planes or spheres are what you basically paste your materials onto. So where do you see these things? Over here, if you look in the lower right where my mouse is, I know the screen's kind of small. There's what's called the project window that shows me kind of all the assets that have been loaded into Unity. I try to keep really organized folders. That helps you a lot. So you see I have a folder of textures. These are my photos. I have a folder of materials. These are basically the materials I've created that have the shaders assigned to them and have the textures drug onto those shaders. So what I found to be the easiest way to import new images in is literally just to open the folder. You can go through a process in Unity to drag them in, but I do much better if I just literally take them. I have this folder called textures. If I just open a folder in the Windows desktop and literally just drag them on here. So I'm going to drag in 3 images, 3 textures essentially. There's a 361, here's a side-by-side, here's a VR180. And so if you're just going in here and you want to fiddle around with customizing this gallery and putting your own things in, how would that work? Just to show you quickly, I can click on this stereo pair here, select it. It's now highlighted in orange. And you can see that up here in the right corner is what's called the inspector. It's telling me that I'm looking at the French cook, which is what I called the plane. And here is the shader, unlit stereo texture. That is the shader that we use to do this. And you can see over here is where the image is. And all I have to do, I have this other image that's in my folder. Watch this. If I just drag this onto here, I've now put a different image in there. And that's it. Same thing. Let's go out a little bit. Here's our big sphere of Central Park. I can click on that once again up in my upper right shader window. I have my inspector and I can click on this using the same shader. It just happens to be set in over-under mode. That's one of the options you get. And I can go into here and take this other image, drag it onto that, and there we have the infinity pool in Singapore. And the same thing works with the VR180 images. But the point is that it's actually not that hard to take this template and go ahead and start putting your own things on it. You literally just have to kind of get used to where selecting the items, moving them around, and dragging your images onto them. Now, there's a lot of resources to learn this stuff, and I'm just giving you an overview, but I'll talk a bit about learning Unity. There's tons of great material on YouTube. There's a guy named Brackeys. There's a few people who've put up amazing tutorials. I have to say that for the most part with Unity, the real challenge, it's like taking a sip from a fire hose. There's so much information that what you really need is someone to help you know what not to work on, to just focus on specific things. What I found very helpful, there's an educational company called TryUniverse. I think their website's tryuniverse.com. They're not paying me to say this, but I spent about 6 months taking their classes and went from barely knowing how to turn Unity on to doing the stuff that you're seeing here. It is really effective, however you do it, to get some sort of structured learning if you really want to learn this stuff. You can get all the information you want on YouTube, but just sorting through it and keeping track of it is really challenging. Just for fun, let me do one of the VR180s so you guys can see that. It's the exact same process. I click on it. I then click over here up in the upper right corner to look at the shader. I can see where the texture is assigned. And all I have to do, I'm going to look for one of my VR180. Let's see what I have here. Looking down here at my images, I can take any of the images I want and drag them right onto that. So that is the process. Let's see if I could put that one on there. So anyway, I encourage you to get in here and experiment a little bit. And I hope you've gotten an overview of what's possible with this. There's so many creative things you can do with it. It's really a very new frontier. It's really just starting out. And there's so much wonderful stereoscopic material that's just waiting to be displayed and people waiting to have it shared with them. So I'm hoping to leave a little bit of time for questions, this is all obviously pre-recorded because I wanted to show you guys this specific stuff. But we can take a couple questions, and there's just endless resources if you're interested. They're endless. People are very helpful in this. It's just kind of like with the stereoscopic community. You can always find someone to teach you stuff and show you how to do things. Same is true in this field. So anyway, I look forward to seeing everyone's work. Go ahead and have fun with this. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, Jim.
There you have it. Do we have time for questions? I'm not sure how tight.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if
people raise their hand, I'll unmute them.
Okay. Yeah, and just cut us off, Steve, because I'll talk about this for hours, and I know you have a convention to run. So.
Yeah, this is new for me. Okay, Valerie, can you unmute? You're the first one with your hand up.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I see, is this Zoom interaction also being recorded so we can hear your other comments that you responded to?
Does the chat stuff gets recorded, right? I'm not sure how that works. Are people able to access the chat? Because we actually have been.
I'm recording the chat. As I said, I'm just filling in for Dave, so I'm not sure maybe Rick would know. Rick?
Yeah, a lot of times you'll find the chat as an archive when you get an archive Zoom meeting. Do you know if that's happening?
Yeah, I can save the chat. I have been.
You can click. There's 3 dots right to the right of the lower chat window. If you click on it, you can save it. I often do that when I'm in these things because people put so much information in chat. It's helpful to get that. And you know what?
Yeah, the problem is everybody can. Personal messages to me on it.
Everybody can save the chat for themselves by clicking on those 3 dots, but it's also saved automatically by the host.
Thanks. And just in case anyone new has come on, I'm going to once again paste. I put a bunch of resources. I tried to put some things in for anyone who wants to really dig into this. There's a Dropbox folder that has the shaders. If you're an experienced Unity user, you can just get a package and get the shaders. If you're brand new to this, you can actually download the entire Unity file, open it in Unity, and have at it. Do the exact stuff I was doing, drag things around, play with it. So even if you've never used Unity before, it's not going to hurt anything. Open it and see if you can follow my little process of dragging the picture onto the material. It's really not hard to do, and it's amazing how quickly you can customize this gallery with just those simple tools and create your own thing.
Yes, I guess I was referring to this interactive session because you answered a lot of questions to the side while it was going on. And
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, chat. That's what I mean. Chat is that whole scroll of text. That's exactly what we're talking about. Because, yeah, I know we've been having a good discussion. Uh-oh,
Yeah, I'm going to record from now on. Maybe we can add that on if you want.
Sure. Yeah, and
we have to get permission to do that kind of thing. So I'll contact you later about that.
Okay, but yeah, and obviously the videos that you saw, the presentation videos, those are on the YouTube channel or something.
Yeah, they'll be on YouTube.
Yeah, so you certainly go back and watch those anytime you like. And there's certainly much better information. There's tons of information on YouTube. I just tried to coalesce these specific things for this specific task into a short period of time. But you can get much more detail on all these topics if you wish.
Okay, I think Franklin will go next, and then Carlton. If that's okay, Carlton, you can finish eating.
Hi, Jim.
How you doing?
Awesome presentation. I tried going in and watching it in AltSpace, and I was trying to get to your actual environment, but I ended up in the AltSpace presentation of this. I have a quick question. I was struggling with this actually. How do you get it out of Unity into AltSpace?
Well, that's a good question. Unfortunately, it's a little complicated. For the next couple weeks, if you download the file that I put on Dropbox, it's in 2019.4, and it actually has the current version of the AltSpace plugin in there. And all you need to do with that file is, if you have an AltSpace account, you create a template. AltSpace has this whole process. You create a template in AltSpace.
Yep.
You can call it Franklin's Gallery. If you then sign into AltSpace using that plugin that's in my file, you can find your template and upload to it. The problem is, in 3 weeks, that's all going to change because welcome to how things work in this world. They are changing to Unity 2020, like 2020.3. They're changing everything. So if you want to do that the easy way, do it in the next week or two. And then there's always a lot of information. AltSpace, they are constantly changing things, and that's one of the reasons why it's such a cool space because it's always pretty up to date.
Yeah, how do you get that plugin? How do you get the plugin? That's what I was having a hard time. But you have that in the file.
It's in the file. I mean, if you open the file I put on there, it already has the AltSpace plugin installed. And so hopefully you can go in. But like I say, you've got about 3 weeks to do it because they're changing to, and then Jay makes a good point. There's a Discord on AltSpace. AltSpace, it's pretty easy to get information about it because there's a lot of people who will answer your questions. But they are, just so you know, they are changing to a new uploading process, and I'm sure that you'll have to go on YouTube. And one great thing is there are a lot of very nice people who share information. So if you go on Google and say, how do I upload to AltSpace, somebody will have made a video because it is going to change. But for the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping it'll be pretty easy because you should actually have everything in that gallery. And, I freely go ahead and use it. I mean, if you want to leave some of my pictures up there, that's fine. They're not.
Thank you. I really appreciate that's very generous of you.
People have been very generous with me. I didn't create these shaders. I didn't create these spheres. It's all stuff I stole from other people. So please steal it from me. That's
yeah, that's where that's where mine died. I couldn't get it back into AltSpace.
Yeah, the world builder. It was so hard to get the latest version, and
and I did everything right, and it didn't work. It never showed up.
It can take a little bit of time, and it's subject to change. That's the basic thing. In fact, I know a lot of people have been having issues just getting into AltSpace this week because unfortunately they picked this week to make some infrastructure changes. Prior to this week, it was always, I put on my Quest, I'd always be on my account. Now I have to sign in every time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's a double-edged sword. AltSpace is very cutting edge and up to date because they're constantly changing things. Because they're constantly changing things, it constantly doesn't work. But that's that's life in the high-tech world. So
I'll call you in 3 weeks when you try to get in, and I can't.
Yeah, I can't say. I did upload a couple things in 2020 because I was afraid, honestly, they were going to change it before the convention started. So the galleries I made for the convention, I went through the process about a month ago of converting them to the newer version and using the new uploader, and it all worked. But it took me all night, and honestly, I don't remember how I did it. Otherwise, I would tell you. I just know that I went on YouTube, found a video where a guy showed me how to do it. It was a different process. I had to get this toolkit from Microsoft.
Right.
It's annoying, but it did eventually work. It does work, but I wish I could say, "Hey, do this. It's easy. It'll take you half an hour." I can't say that. I wish I could. You might be up all night, but you will eventually get it to happen.
Thank you very much again.
Cheers. Thanks for coming, watching.
Okay. Carlton?
Testing 1, 2, is it working?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. It was great,
I love
Jim.
that kitchen background, man. That's so cool. Can I get a JPEG of it?
Spent a lot of money on that.
Yeah, it looks so realistic. That's what I like about it.
It changes daily. You maybe answered this already, but you said this is like a new art form in a way. It's a new thing. And as someone that really isn't that exposed to it yet, is there a place on the internet where you can see a basic version, an intermediate version, and an advanced production of it? So I can see.
I'm sorry, version of what? Like version of
whatever these. Are you creating like 5-minute videos, 3-minute videos? I really don't. I don't have my. I don't have
I see what you're asking.
of what's,
yeah. There's tons of videos. As I kind of alluded to in the workshop, I spent well over a year trying to go through all this material and just getting honestly confused. And I mean, there's just so much stuff. If you really want to learn this, it is worth finding an organized course. I think I've.
But I don't know what the final product is. What is the final goal of this?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a really good question, and it is something I probably should have covered in here, because what I'm talking about specifically is worlds in AltSpace. AltSpace is just one kind of. AltSpace is essentially this social network for VR, and a lot of us are using it as a free prototyping environment where we put up our prototypes of our things. But in my humble opinion, the real ultimate goal for this, and what I hope people will think of, is creating VR apps for the Oculus, VR apps for Steam VR. In other words, you're an artist and you want to present your artwork. If you come up with art in this medium, a great way to present it is to actually make a VR app. And with a VR app, you can do things like put 3D videos in. That's a little bit more of a complicated process. I don't think I'd be able to cover that in a half-hour workshop. But
okay, but I still
I think a VR app is ultimately, that's what I'm hoping to see. What my vision of this is that, for example, if you're a recording artist, right now they put out a music video on MTV. I like to think that in 5 years, they'll put out an app for the Oculus. You'll put it on and you'll be surrounded. Maybe you'll see them playing live in front of a cool environment someone created. Maybe the music, you'll be able to actually go and mix it yourself. You'll be able to customize it. So it's still sort of unknown what is the output of this, but I encourage people to think of, you're an artist or you're a musician or whatever you are, you have a collection of 3D cards. Think of turning them into an app. You can.
Well, is there any place on the internet? Is there any place on the internet where you could see an example of a basic, intermediate, and advanced version of this, so I can see what the, I can.
By version of a tutorial or version?
No, of a product, of a content.
What about the ones for the convention?
Yeah, I mean, we put up a bunch of AltSpace is actually a very good place to go and look at stuff people have made. What's neat about AltSpace is you can kind of go in there and just see what are the popular worlds, and people are coming up with all kinds of cool things on there.
I know. Okay.
Can I explain something real quick, Carlton?
Yeah.
Let me explain that. There's tons of tutorials and worlds in AltSpace.
And I just
a lot of things, but the 3D thing is the special thing, and that's what I asked Jim to go over, is more putting the 3D stuff in there.
All right. Okay.
Stereoscopic, just to be clear.
Stereoscopic. Thank you.
Watch your terms, pal. Next thing you're going to be telling me you have a hologram that's made with a laser. You watch it.
This is all holographic.
We digress.
Okay. I'm taking the spotlight off myself.
And feel free to contact me, Carlton, if I haven't answered your question, because there's so much stuff. I don't know if I got to what you were asking, but you know how to reach me.
It's a new world, so.
It is, yeah. And then we, depending on guys like you, to put interesting stuff in it, because there's a need for that. So, I hope you'll have at it.
Be sure and save the chat, because there's a lot of information in there now.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it.
There's people have put links in, and there's a lot of information. If you're searching for it, it's there.
Yeah, I guess we'll finish up here for now. We don't have that much time.
I'll go to Allspace. I'll go to that world. I think one more time I'm going to put my links up here just if anyone's new.
Okay.
But I'll go hang out. If anyone wants to come and hang out in the gallery workshop world, which is linked here, if there's any other questions. Someone asked, what's a professional project made with Unity? Beat Saber. Beat Saber is one of the most popular VR apps in the world. It was made in Unity. I think probably about half the VR apps that are out there. Or, if not more. Unity is a very popular development tool. There are others. There's Unreal, there's others. But, Unity is probably the easiest one to learn to dive into this. I know you guys got to go on and do your convention, so I'm going to thank everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really interesting topic. Love to see people making more stuff in this. And hopefully we'll do more of this in future conventions in person.